The notion of top and bottom seems obvious as a painter. Of course, a painting has a top and a bottom. But does the top of the painting correspond to the area around our heads? Does the bottom of the painting refer to the area at our feet? Not all paintings subscribe to that. De Kooning here, very much a nature painter. As highly abstracted as this is, it has a top and a bottom. You can see the evidence of a horizon line or double horizon line at the top. Drips and movements of the paint tend to go down, and the larger elements at the bottom seem to be somewhat stacked in the foreground there as well. If we look at this Sir William Orpah, an Irish painter, a fabulous painter, self-portrait of him, it's not large, it's hard to see. There is the element, the vertical element of the head placed at the top, backlit, so your eyes go right to the head, the backlighting. Then down, all the detail on the floor, the accoutrement, all the bottles and flowers and things of his life, his studio life, at the bottom. There's a bottom and a top. Stanton Mcdonald Wright, an American modernist painter. Again, even though this is highly abstracted, it has a stacking feeling as if the bottom and the top are as we see them. The bottom is around our feet, the top is around our heads. So it does apply no matter if it's more representational or more abstracted. Think of the bottom and the top when you look at a painting. Glenn Gould lived from 1932 to 1982, and he is my role model as an artist. He's not even a painter. He was a Canadian pianist and philosopher. I became obsessed with him in 1994 and just spent years and years and years going up to Canada to read his writings, listen to his recordings. He did videos and documentaries, and he often talks about the notion of ecstasy and its role in the artist's life. He said that the purpose of art is the gradual, lifelong construction of a state of wonder and serenity. The gradual, lifelong construction of a state of wonder and serenity. I love the patience implied in that, and I love the notion of dedication, a slow, gradual learning and unlearning through the arc of one's career as an artist. He knew how to create his life as an artist, and he knew how to protect that life. He was a remarkable pioneer in terms of the performance, the recording, and the interpretation of music in the mass media. And he said that ecstasy is the condition that we aspire to in a work of art. And he defines ecstasy not as a euphoric emotion from listening to music, but a grafting together of two identities, the artist and the spectator, through the terms of the work. It's that momentary heightened awareness, that split-second moment when you almost feel like you step out of your body and then back into it. Two artists, two people brought together in communication one-to-one. He was very much about that one-to-one communication. Ecstasy for me in a painting is bending the laws of nature to fit the laws of art. The laws of nature being this real space, gravity, real light. The laws of nature being flatness, two-dimensional surface. And we try to bend these things to fit into the painting, into the world of the painting. The idea of seeing air. There's no such thing as an air in a painting. It's all paint, it's all surface. But how do you try to bend that real experience into the painting? That to me, that idea of bending is ecstasy. And the notion of verticals and horizontals that I referred to before. This is a painting of mine from last year. You can see a lot of verticals and horizontals. You can see it in this Picasso etching of the figure, one seated in the vertical orientation, the other in the horizontal. It creates very much, again, that feeling of vertical horizontal, that detonation when they cross, the two cross. And here in Agnes Martin, almost non-objective, a very highly abstracted image, which has really no top or bottom. It's more like a chart or a map, but very much subscribes, again, to the notion of vertical and horizontal. There are vertical elements, figurative, if you extrapolate, and then horizontal elements, which again refer to landscape. If you think of Navajo rugs, the notion of structure and stripes and moving back in space. I love Agnes Martin. Another taller vertical in line. And you can see again the notion of top and bottom, and also vertical, horizontal. Robert Rauschenberg. I've always had kind of a man crush on Robert Rauschenberg. This is from 1955, called The Bed, one of his most famous assemblages. And speaking personally, I had a show at the Butler Institute of American Art in 2001, and he was partially responsible for making that happen. I have a painting in the collection, And he was having a show there at the time and was being toured through the galleries, and apparently really loved my painting. It had never heard of me and wanted to know more about me and my work. And that sort of helped the ball start rolling for that show. So there's a personal connection there. I've always loved his work. I love his sense of humor. I love the idea of the personal, that letting the world in, letting your world be part of the work, the personal. He took literally his bed and put it on the wall. It's his pillow, it's his blankets. He painted on them, and he took something strictly of horizontal context, your bed, put it into a new context, the wall, on the wall. Instigating lots of ideas and also the notion of there's hardly anything more personal than your bed, and it's right here in a public forum in the context of a work of art. I think is fascinating. This is a painting of mine which had nothing to do with the bed, but actually I thought the two had kind of a relationship between, so I just paired them together as well. Again, the notion of top and bottom, of dark and light, of vertical and horizontal, and of a feeling of place. Even though it's not specific, it feels like you're there, like there's something specific. Let me go right there. I use a lot of paint because I want there to be a certain resistance to the ideas before you get to them. I want you to have to deal with the paint, with the juiciness, the substance of the paint first. I want you to acknowledge that physical part first. A painting is not a one-hit experience. It's a series of repeated encounters that you come back to, you consider, you look again, then you consider more, and then all in a split second, and then you look again. The more you look, I think the more you get beyond the material, into something a little bit deeper. I think gradually you begin to project your vitality onto the paint, onto the surface of the paint. And I think within that moment, there's the opportunity for tender human communication, just for a split second, a one-to-one communication through the terms of the paint. And that, I think, brings to one of the central conflicts in my work. On one hand, I ask you to go beyond the paint, beyond the physical stuff of the paint, to something perhaps a little more ethereal, more internal, and at the same time, I keep your attention very much on the surface. You have to deal with the paint, with the surface, which I think perhaps poses some interesting questions in terms of subject versus object, or image versus form, or spirit versus matter. All those dualities I try to compress into the work. Nothing new, again. It's just something that I explore and I study from history and try to inch forward in my own work. When I look at a painting, there's three things, and I've talked about this before. I'm the first thing, the painting is the second thing. It's critical, and we have to together create the third thing. There has to be a third thing. It's me and the painting, and together there has to be a third thing that we create together. In a split second, it's imperative that it be that third thing. If it's not there, it's dead. The painting's dead. It's what I call the hum. A great painter friend of mine says the painting has to hum. Another one of those strange adjectives, or verbs. But a painting can hum, I think, when it's calibrated right. When it's right, it hums. That's what I aspire to. When is the moment when outside experience suddenly becomes interior experience? When does an experience out here become private and internal? That split second, that's the moment I want to try to freeze in my paintings. That split second moment between external and internal. And we're going to finish just with a couple shots of my studio. We're on 27th Street between Broadway and 6th in the Flower District. I'm on the 6th floor, so that's my space here. It's about 900 square feet, and that's looking north toward the Empire State Building out that way. It's a beautiful rectangular space, high ceilings, ample light, even though I don't care at all about natural light. I like artificial light. And I work, you can see, the big ones stay in one end of the room for 8 or 9 months. The smaller ones rotate in, that's the office area. There's a horseshoe up there. And I start my day, I get there usually around, I drop the kids at school at 8:30, I go to the gym and breakfast. I'm there usually by 9:45 or 10. And I spend the first hour or so doing correspondence or paperwork and just thinking about what I might be doing the rest of the day in painting. And then I get to work, and then I'm usually out of there by 5 or 5:30, and then back home, generally Monday to Friday. And I like that, these parameters with kids. I tend to be more productive because I have less free time. In the old days, I would work, 16-hour days, and Chinese food would be arriving, and, I'd sleep there, and, I'd paint, and then all of a sudden I'd wake up, and then, So I didn't know what was dreaming and what was real. You can see a close-up of some of the tables. It's unusually organized here, but it's I'll fix that. Latex gloves, very important if you're oil painters, for your mediums. Try to get used to latex surgical gloves. You can get them at CVS or Duane Reade. The pallets, I work traditional pallets on the hand, and I work several of them at the same time, generally with one hue or two hues on one palette, and then I'll work the tonal ranges of that color, and then another color on another palette, and so on. Brushes in these big crusty buckets. I don't wash my brushes. The small ones I do wash. The big ones I dip. At the end of the day, I wash them off in paint thinner. Then I dunk them in a big tub of hot water with green palm olive in there, and they stay supple and soft and liquid until the next day when I come in. Then I go back into the terps, and then I go to work again. It's hard to see in some of these, but the first thing I do when I get a new brush is I snap it in half. I break it. I like that feeling of a stub, of like a primitive tool in my hand. I like there to be less distance between my hand and the surface. I feel more in it that way. And I like the notion of disrespect for my materials. I love what they do. I respect immensely what a brush does, but I don't respect a brush. And the reason is I think it's important to, I want to make mistakes. I welcome mistakes. Painting is not about solving problems. Painting is about making problems. And that's how you get better as a painter. You can see the floor is just endless problems. That's it for scale, but it's a couple of several inches deep of old mistakes just scraped off. I spent a great deal of time scraping. Lots of mistakes. You can see the room that is divided, the big paintings here, the small there, and then the long card table in the middle, and that's where everything's laid out. The card table is rested, as you can see here, on two suitcases, two black Samsonite suitcases. There it is, close up there. Inside those suitcases are all clothes and some cash money I had when I moved to New York City. In case things didn't work out, I could always just go back like that. So in those are my clothes from 1987 and some money. Like that. Yeah, I'll never open them. Like that. And they actually raise the table up because I'm tall, so I have to have it up higher. So it's a nice idea that notion of moving, of travel, is literally supporting my practice. Some of the mediums, Galkid, linseed oil, liquin, Neo McGilp. These are, the painters will know some of these terms. Cold wax medium. I experiment with different types of mediums, and I mix them often in these kind of Chinese food containers. And more mediums here as well. I use both small tubes for more expensive colors and then big fat 150 milliliter tubes for more copious amounts of color. Lots of brands. I don't have any one brand that I use. And there's one of the pallets close up as well. And they get scraped every night before I go home.